Hi, my name is Tom Clendon and I am an ACCA subject expert for SBR. Now, this video is all about applying ethical principles in a way that's going to earn you marks in the exam. And we know that in question 2 of the SBR exam, ethical principles will always be tested.
So the aim or goal of this video, if you like, is to help you apply ethical principles in order to earn marks. And therefore, the first thing I'm going to do is just to quickly revise and make sure you're comfortable with the 5 pillars and give you some pointers as to how you are going to be earning those valuable professional marks. We need to keep our eyes on the prize. And for me, the best way is to demonstrate, is to show you how to apply ethical principles to earn marks by doing a question, by showing you application. And at the end of this short video, I would encourage you to reflect as to what you've learned from this video, what you're going to take away from this video, and what you're going to put into practice. The 5 pillars. Now, the first ethical pillar is objectivity. It's about being independent, not being compromised. Professional behaviour is about the way you conduct yourself. Bullying, bribing, swearing is unethical, is unprofessional. We should reply to our emails. We should always be polite. And we should know what we're doing. We should be professionally competent. We should pay due care and attention. Yeah, we should keep up to date with CPD. Now, CPD, continuing professional development. Now, I'm an SBR expert, so I'm up to speed on IFRSs. But I'm rusty on tax and I don't want to take any chances. So even though I'm ACCA, I actually employ an accountant to do my personal tax, somebody who specialises in tax. Integrity is a really important part of ethical behaviour, and it's one of those things which is so often there in the examination. Integrity is about being honest, is about doing the right thing and not trying to mislead people. Finally, confidentiality. We need to respect the confidentiality of information that comes our way in the course of our professional duties as accountants. We shouldn't share them willy-nilly with third parties. We shouldn't seek to gain a personal benefit from information that's come to us in our professional capacity. Ethical behaviour. It's not always black and white. In the exam, there are dilemmas, and we are going to have to show our ability to apply these principles, in answering the question. Now, in the exam, in question 2, there will be 2 professional marks, and these are awarded at the discretion of the marker. Now, what they're looking for is a structured answer, a considered answer, one that would be perhaps suitable to be handed in at the workplace, something that shows a deliberate care has been taken into account in preparing that answer. Maybe there's reflection involved. Maybe there are headings involved. And certainly there's always going to be a professional mark for linking the ethical principles to the situation in a practical way that shows you understand the principles and how they relate to real life situations. Now, sometimes questions specifically ask for advice or action points. But you know what? Even if the question doesn't explicitly ask for an action point, I think it's a really useful thing to do at the end of your answer to come up with a suggestion, to come up with an action point. It's not, you don't go to the doctor just for a diagnosis. Having got the diagnosis and understanding of the medical dilemma, you then want an action point. Yeah, you then want to be told to lose weight or go for this operation. So I see it as a natural part of our structure of our answer to finish not with a conclusion, but with an action point. And I repeat, even if that's not explicitly required within the question, yeah, you will be capable of being awarded a professional mark for coming up with a valid, rounded action point as a conclusion. Application, application, application. I want to show you how to earn marks by applying ethical principles. And the best way, I think, is to show you an example. And the example that I'm going to use is from a recent examination question, which is on the ACCA practice platform. It is question 2 from the September-December 2022 examination. And maybe, just maybe, you want to pause this video and go onto the ACCA practice platform and do the question yourself. Or maybe you want to read this slide and in a moment pause the video to have a go at the question yourself. And when we're doing a question, we always read the requirement first. And the requirement of this question is to explain the ethical issues for the finance director, Mr. Betso, setting out how the issues may be resolved. Now, the reason I've said 10 plus 2 is because there are 10 marks available and then an extra 2 marks available for professional marks if we put together a considered, structured, an appropriate answer, a good answer, all right? And that's the information that we are basically given. So this is how the question presents itself on the ACCA practice platform. We've got some general STEM information here, which, to be honest, doesn't really take me very forward. I am concentrating exclusively on the requirement of the question for part B, which is about explaining the ethical issues. In this particular question, part A was standalone. Now, what I've done already is I have copy pasted across the requirement so that I have in my word response area already the requirement in front of me, and I'm just going to concentrate in this particular question, in this particular video, in answering this part of the question. And the information that I have is found in Exhibit. Now, the requirement, once again, is to explain the ethical issues for the finance director, Mr. Betsu. And although the word "and" isn't there, and although there isn't a specific statement about actions, it does say to set out how the issues may be resolved. There are 2 professional marks. Let's have a look at the information that we're actually being given. So the company uses big data analytics, to indicate the potential of finding oil. The chief data officer understands things, as you would expect, can explain things clearly. Now, our Mr. Betso is an ACCA qualified member, and what he has is little knowledge of what's going on here. He thinks everything is a little bit too complex, and maybe there's something we can pick up on about that in terms of ethical issues. Now, there's a paragraph and there's an outcome of a set of data where basically there was little chance of oil being found. But the finance director, Mr. Betsu, he insisted the data was run again so that there would be a more favourable outcome. Okay, so he is picking up on this idea that you would run the data again to include old data that somehow would create a more favourable outcome. Now, Mr. Betsu has a friend. We all have friends who works at the other company, Oilo, and they've suggested, she's asked for advice as to how to account for the license granted, and Mr. Betso has suggested to use IFRS 16. So there's something here about IFRS 16, there's something here about the right to use license. Now, Mr. Betso knew that his friend had shares in the Oilo company and suggested to her that the share price was likely to fall because there was little chance of the oil being found as a result of granting the license. And I suppose I've highlighted those things which I have initially found interesting or of note that I want to come back to at a later date. But first things first, I am going to produce an answer for you, which I would like you to consider. So let's briefly consider this answer, and I want you to have in mind how many marks you might be awarding an answer like this. So what we've got is clearly some nice headings, and we've got a clarification that because Betso is an ACCA member, they should know about the ethical code and needs to be competent. There then follows some really good, technically correct descriptions of objectivity, competence, professional behaviour, integrity, confidentiality. I cannot emphasize too much how technically correct these descriptions are of your 5 audit pillars, of your 5 ethical pillars. Beautifully headed up. And then we have some action points. Betso should consult with ACCA. Betso should consider resignation. How many marks out of 12 would you give that? I wish I could hear your answer. I wish I knew. I'm going to share with you how many marks I would give it. I think I would give it 1. And actually, that would be a generous 1. All this business about the 5 pillars is just, well, it's vomit, it's regurgitation, it's being a parrot, it's absolutely worthless, meaningless. I think the fact that we've identified that Betso is an ACCA member, should know about the ethical code, needs to be competent, and the fact I'm giving that a mark. These action points are so generic that they don't relate really to the case at all. I know the word Betso is being used, which implies a little bit of application, but this is too generic. It's absolutely, not addressing the issues of the question at all. So for me, there's something in this opening paragraph which talks to competence and talks to the idea of big data. Now, we've established that Betso is an ACCA member, and we've established that he has little knowledge of the technology involved. Do you think that makes him incompetent to do his job as a finance director? I don't think so. It's because his direct report is the expert. And I think that's okay. So Betso does not need to be the expert. However, I do feel it's a bit disrespectful. It feels unprofessional, for Betso to start claiming that they are, well, what do they say? They have little knowledge of the technology involved. However, it feels unprofessional for Betso to have little knowledge, and I'm copying that information, that phrase, to have little knowledge, to claim ignorance, when after all, the boss, the technology boss, the big data boss, actually says that they are really good at communicating this to their customers because they can explain outcomes simply and clearly to their customers. So that's not a black and white answer. I'm not saying he's incompetent and therefore massively unethical. I'm saying that he really just should know a little bit more and not claim. So we've got another subheading there. Oh, competence is spelt incorrectly. Arguably that should have an E in there. There's no spell check, but it doesn't matter. Don't obsess about small little spelling mistakes. You've got to keep moving. So I've looked at the first paragraph. Now, what does the second paragraph tell me? It tells me that Betso is the finance director and he's insisted that data was run again to include historical data, which would mean a more favourable outcome. And this business of Olio, whatever it is, they've got a friend who works there. And this friend owns shares. So there's a suggestion that what's going on here is that Betso is interfering with the integrity of a system, and he is producing a report or making the company produce a report which is misleading. And I think that points to integrity. And I want to have another subheading which is about integrity and the historical data. I want to address that as a separate point because Betso is interfering. And quite frankly, that is deception. It is unethical. It is unethical to deliberately, manipulate the data Now, the motivation is there, I think, because of the friend. So he's shown a lack of objectivity. I think he's trying to help his friend in some way gain an insider advantage. Now, normally you think about inside information as information about the share price going up, but in this case, it's about the share price going down, but the friend can still benefit by selling the shares, to avoid the loss. That's still a benefit, to avoid the subsequent fall in value. Or you could even engage in short selling. There are ways, if you feel you know how the market is going to move in the future, whether it's up or down, either way, you can make money from that. So I'm very comfortable with, calling out bad behavior here. And you've got to keep an eye on the time, but you want to conclude your answer with some action points. Now, who are we addressing here? We are addressing Betso himself. How are the issues going to be resolved? What is Betso going to have to do? Betso. I think what Betso is going to have to do is to reflect. Yeah? Betso needs to reflect on his actions in the context of the ethical principles. He needs to start putting things right. He needs to open up and be honest with all those impacted by his unethical behavior. Right. Let's take a time out. Let's have a review. How many marks do you think these 4 headings are actually worth? Remember, we're being marked out of 12. There are 10 marks, and then there are 2 professional marks. Do you think this is worth a pass? Well, I think the first paragraph is worth a mark. I think the competence on big data is probably worth 2. All right. It's a nuanced point. Yeah. And we've kind of had a discussion. And I'm going to say 2. Integrity. And if I doubt whether it should be worth 2, I'm also going to award myself 2 marks for the integrity and historical data. And I was bordering on 3. So I've got 1, 2, 2 makes 5. The action point makes 6. Then I have to think about, and 6 out of 12 is a pass. Then I have to think about my professional marks. And is it structured? Yes. Have we talked about insider trading and, deliberate manipulation and integrity? Yes, I think we've linked it. So I am actually comfortable giving this answer 8 out of 12, which is not a perfect answer. How can we simply improve this answer? Well, let me tell you that there's a piece of information in the question that we identified and have absolutely ignored. And that is around the fact that advice has been given on how to account for a license granted. And there's a suggestion that it should be dealt with under FRS 16. Now that has been totally ignored. Now, because we can edit, we can, put it in before the action. We don't have to put it in at the bottom. So we can bring in this point about FRS 16. So put something in like that and you're going to earn yourself even more marks. Yeah, because actually the advice given was technically incorrect. All right. Now that may be something that you knew or you didn't know, but actually that shouldn't be the difference between you passing or failing this particular question. Realistically, you're not going to get 12 out of 12. You don't want to get 12 out of 12 because you don't want to overrun the time that you spend on this question. My style is to keep it simple. My style is to try and help you pass the examination. I'm not here to read out the examiner's answer. You can research that. You can look at that yourself. That's one of my action points. So let's reflect. In question 2, and in fact in SBR in general, you can't brain dump. You can't go into the exam with a preconceived set of information in your head that you then write down that's going to earn you marks. Because marks in ethics are always there for application. So you have to spend time in the exam reading, thinking, and then answering the question. And it helps if you plan it. And it helps if you use headings. You break it down. It's a lot easier for the marker because they're looking to award 1 mark at a time. So try and challenge them by writing in short, sharp, simple paragraphs. When you've made a point, move on. It's not a brain dump. We've said that. So you're responding to the information within the case. So as you saw, keep the information in front of you as you're writing your answer, so you can keep going backwards and forwards with your eyes. You are constantly answering the question. You've got the requirement of the question in front of you on your screen. You've got the information that you're being used to inspire you to construct your answer, and you've got your answer, just like I was showing you. Respond to the information within the question. And come up with some action points at the end. Come up with something positive for the individual to do at the end. By putting together an answer that is structured, by putting together an answer which responds to the information, by making action points your conclusion, you will naturally be earning the professional marks. What I would like you to do now is to go away and to review and learn from the examiner's answer. It's longer than mine. Arguably, it's better than mine because it's the examiner's answer. But our task in the exam is to pass the exam. So we can learn from the examiner's answer, but we're never going to produce an answer of such quality, of such depth, of such reflection. So don't be too hard on yourself. Stick to the basic principles, stick to time management, and practice questions, please. Yeah, practice questions to time, and ideally get them marked. My name is Tom Clendon, and I am an ACCA SBR expert, and I'm trying to help you pass the SBR exam. Thank you so much for listening.